around, I'd finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I wanna flee, my world I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead.
Well, hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough. Glad you're joining me today. And today I got a special guest. I'm joined by Heather Butler, and she is the host of the Urban Permaculture Podcast, which I had the pleasure of just being on recently. How you doing, Heather?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good, and I'm glad you decided to come on and share with us your story about your urban permaculture homestead. I think it's when I was on your show, I got to hear a little bit about that, and I thought it was pretty exciting, and I really enjoyed hearing about it. So I thought that's a story I'd like my listeners to hear. So I want to hear all about that. But first, why don't we just jump in? Tell us a little bit about you and your homestead, and kind of just where you are in your journey.
Yeah. So like he said, my name is Heather. Myself and my husband, Bob, we are Hogs and Hens Urban Farm. And we started out 3 years ago with just a little garden box, and it was a raised box on stilts, basically. We had tomatoes and peppers. They were doing so well. And then the squirrels found them, and we were devastated. And when you have such a small little area and it's all taken out by one animal, that was our whole crop for the year. So we kind of started talking about it, and we're like, we really want to do more with this. So last year, we got married in July of last year at our house. And in the middle of doing a wedding at our house, we decided that we wanted a massive garden. And so we started with that. And we started with a 40-foot by 40-foot giant plot.
Oh,
we have 16 beds in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good sized garden.
It's crazy. There are 16 9-foot by 3-foot raised beds in there. And then the entire perimeter is lined with a combination of potted plants, as well as a raised bed in the middle of it that's on a stilts bed. The original bed is still there. A little greenhouse. And then we grow mushrooms all along the perimeter as well, and under a bunch of our leafy things.
Nice. Yeah. Great. And you're doing you have chickens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you had chickens right now, but you're looking at getting other livestock as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've decided we want to add quail and rabbit to our homestead. We are actually working on the hutches this weekend. Awesome. So it's a race to see if he gets the rabbits done first, or if I get the quail done first, to see which animal we start with. But
nothing will motivate you quicker than having something on the way. I'll tell you that.
Totally.
Yeah. You'll get all kinds of stuff done.
And it's crazy because we started with the gardening side of things, and the more we dug into it, we learned a little bit about mushrooms, and we're like, we could totally do this. And then, of course, that put us down the rabbit hole. And then we realized, we can do a lot with what we have. And that just kind of springboarded this whole permaculture movement for us. Yeah. We also do vermicomposting. So I guess technically I raise worms. I guess that's
We'll count it.
But we raise worms. So we have a worm bed that we do as well. And we do on-site composting of all of our vegetables, all of our junk mail that is compostable gets composted, all kitchen scraps, coffee grinds, all that good stuff. So it's definitely been awesome. But the most exciting part is our expansion.
Yeah.
That's the big deal. So as we got started on this, we realized we really want to have a lot more fruit trees, but based on the amount of space that we had, and not wanting our entire yard to be gone because we have dogs and don't want them running in my garden and destroying everything. So we started looking around, and we found out that in a lot of cities, not just ours, you can actually purchase adjoining lots that are vacant if they're city-owned property for next to nothing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, you was telling me about that. Sounds like you got a really good deal, and it's amazing those properties. Sometimes like you live in Dayton, so Ohio, and there's just a lot of areas in some larger towns that are pretty run down, and there's nothing they can do with those lots. So when folks can purchase them really cheap and do something really constructive with them, like, urban permaculture homesteading, that's pretty awesome. That's a good use of that space.
It is. So we live in a historical district, so you can't really put in new construction in our neighborhood. So a vacant lot can't really be used for that because, again, historical district. And to build a house to the specs of a historical home in our area, the cost would be really high. And with that in mind, the property value in our neighborhood is not at a point where it can support a $450,000 and up house, which is what it would cost to build something in that area to spec historically. So roughly. And so with that in mind, we started talking to our city officials and doing our research, and we found out that there's this program where you can purchase adjoining lots if you own the existing structures that touch them. And so we did, and then we found out there are 2 lots. So we expanded. Our house was originally a row house, and there used to be tons of houses, little long, skinny houses side by side by side. Ours is the last one standing in that little row. So we've had a lot of challenges with it, but it's been an adventure too. When we put in our first garden, we started fencing it. And as we ran the auger, we found the foundation for the old house that was there before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a hard way to find that.
Yeah. Oh, it was the worst. And then they backfilled it with all of the construction material. Yeah. So there was rocks and nails and glass and all kinds of stuff in there. So we've had to sift it. And we're doing a lasagna bed kind of style on our properties. So the ground that's underneath there, it's going to be pretty far down because we've got 6 inches of mulch on top of compost and topsoil and things like that before you get to that. Yeah. But even still, we wanted to make sure we didn't have glass and nails and toxins there. So we still had to dig around and go through all of that before we could get started.
Did you do any like soil tests or anything before you started? Or
we did, because with them backfilling, there was concern, what if there's arsenic or if there's, any of those things, asbestos or just any of the chemicals that are gnarly that they used in those old homes. And luckily for us, there was not.
Really? That's surprising. Yeah, that's really good.
They said there were trace amounts of asbestos, but it was such a trace amount, they said it didn't pose a harm.
Yeah.
And what we were doing, it was mitigated enough with what we were doing. So we're safe.
Sure. But so you decided not to go with like raised beds on that property. You're just going right into the ground on that property.
It's kind of a combination deal.
Okay.
We covered the entire property, the entire side lot in wood chip mulch. So it's about 6 inches deep in wood chip mulch. And then on top of that, then we build our lasagna beds so that as that wood chip mulch breaks down, it's going to create soil around it. Yeah. And eventually the borders, because we didn't put a bottom on our beds. So eventually the borders we're just going to remove. But for now, that's the area that we put the compost and the dirt and the things. Yeah. We're letting the ways and all the side areas all basically compost naturally.
Yeah.
More of the like a back to Eden method style.
Since you have the wood chip so thick and the beds on top of it, it's almost has a hugelkultur effect even to some degree.
Yeah, it works out really well for us because we don't have to water nearly as much. Yeah. We did find the first year that it was sucking up a lot of the nitrogen. Mm-hmm. So we do water and fertilize with a nitrogen-based organic fertilizer because we just couldn't keep it full of nitrogen. But now this year, it's releasing on its own. So when I did my soil test, it came back and our nitrogen level is leveling out some. So that was exciting.
For folks who don't realize that, a lot of folks will say, don't put wood chips on your garden because it robs of nitrogen. Well, generally, when you're putting the wood chips on top of the soil, it doesn't. It'll hurt it right at the very top of the soil. But unless you are covering wood chips with the soil or mixing them into your soil, that's where you run into a problem where it does actually pull the nitrogen from your soil.
Yeah. We learned that the hard way. We just jumped in feet first, and it was quite an adventure. We started doing that, and living in the city, it's not like we have farmers around us to say, hey, can I get some of your manure? I can't have large livestock because I live in the city. So we didn't have chickens or anything yet. So getting manure we had to source from a friend. So outside of town, a friend of ours works at an equestrian center, and they're all very, very, very healthy diet horses that do not have any pesticides. They're all organically fed, and they're all super healthy things. And so we get the manure from her, and then we bring it over, and it hangs out at our house and ages. I'm sure my neighbors love it, but they have never. So
Yeah.
that's too. But the new lot is 135 feet long by 70 feet wide.
Nice.
So it's huge.
Yeah.
And the challenge with that is there's a black walnut right in the middle of it that is a very mature black walnut. So we got to be really careful with that juglone. So we're working on building our guilds around it first to contain that juglone.
Yeah, and there's a lot of plants that do okay around walnuts, so that you can do a nice guild around it that's still productive. You just have to be really selective in what you put in there, and then some plants will even create like a barrier to kind of hold that juglone in that area, in that guild. So yeah, it's always a challenge when you get a tree like that. Really, any large tree in the middle of a property can limit you with the shade and anything it puts off, but. Yeah, and even then you have to be careful with like the leaf litter and things like that, because until it starts composting, it will still contain a little bit of that too. So
yeah,
there's some challenges with it, but it sounds like you know what you're dealing with there, and
I'm trying.
you're doing good. It sounds like, yeah.
We're putting a mulberry over there because I love mulberry, and we have a mulberry tree in our neighbor's backyard. It's another vacant lot, but it's a neighboring lot and nobody lives there. So I did take a little clipping off of that. It's city owned. I have permission to do so, and I've propagated it. So I didn't know if it would work, but it did.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
So we're excited. So I have a baby mulberry tree that is propagated from the backyard neighbor. And it's crazy. If you get a chance to look at our Facebook page, Hogs and Hens Urban Farm, I posted a video the other day of what the properties look like around us. These empty lots are just wide open with half burned out structures, and people just dump their trash there. You'll find giant furniture, car parts. There's a transmission for some kind of vehicle laying back there.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, in the city, a lot of times, the utilities include trash service.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's utilities get shut off, they no longer have trash service. And so it's common practice. They just dump their trash in a property they know is vacant. And there's plenty of those in our area. So I've been talking to a lot of my neighbors about buying up some of these lots and just expanding their yards, because, we've all complained about the garbage because it blows all through our yards and it makes everything look terrible. Not to mention, who knows what kind of stuff is in that garbage, of course. I mean, it could be any level of foul. And so now some of our neighbors are looking into the process of purchasing some of these lots up. But it's been an adventure, and I've loved every minute of it.
Since the city's been working with you so well on this, are they making it one large property when you do this, or are they still keeping it separate in properties?
So initially we'll have 4 different lots that we own. So the land that our house sits on is a lot. The land that the garden sits on is a lot. And then the 2 that we just purchased are 2 separate lots. Okay. Once everything is kind of settled and all that, next year we'll be able to merge them all.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, because currently as standalone lots, we can't put any permanent structures on any of them. I can't build like a garage or a shed or a permanent greenhouse. But once they're merged, we can do that. But I got to wait till later in the tax year before I can do that. Yeah,
I was kind of wondering about that. If they was considering it because your house is on that property and you make it all one property, does it like show a new building on that property? I was kind of curious about that. Also, I wonder, like, they're not charging you very much for the lots, but I wonder once you combine them, if it'll increase the taxes quite a bit on your property. Probably will a little bit.
I'm not sure. The current tax for lots is only $64 because they're not a lot vacant right now. But they're vacant. Yeah. There's nothing there except for a tree on the one, and an abandoned concrete table was on the other one. It's a big like patio table that's concrete, but that's all that was there. So it was $64 a year, which is totally reasonable. Once we come back,
absolutely.
I don't know, because I assume they're going to do a reassessment of our property.
Right. Yeah. Now,
when we bought the house, so my husband bought the house, it'll be 6 years ago in June. And when he bought the house, it was in a state of disrepair, There were weeds and shrubs that were grown up to the point he knew the house had a garage, but you could physically see the garage.
Wow.
And so the woman that had lived there before had passed away. And after she passed, it was in probate for quite a while. She had 10 children. So while that got all sorted through probate and the kids decided what to do, it just got overgrown and nobody wanted to take care of it. So it took him a long time to get to where we can even see the backyard, let alone have, this lush green area now.
Well, that's pretty amazing what you guys have accomplished in less than a couple of years, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you went all out and you're not done yet. And I love how you're expanding and trying to really revitalize the neighborhood, even by taking these vacant lots and making them something useful and beautiful. And I think that that will probably have an impact on a lot of your neighbors who can look into doing the same thing. And I can just see this spreading like a fire through there. Everybody wanting to be involved with something like that. And a lot of larger cities, they are doing things like that. I've seen that in Detroit. I've seen that in like St. Louis and Kansas City and some of these areas that's been really run down, and a lot of, like you said, a lot of vacant lots and stuff. And people are doing some pretty amazing things. And it sounds like you're just another example of that for sure.
I'm trying really hard to be the change that I want to see in the world. I see so many of these houses every day as we travel around. And so my husband and I travel for work. We work on airplanes for a living. And as such, we are constantly on the go. And with that in mind, I'm in a different city every day. I'm actually talking to you right now from Danbury, Connecticut. I live in Dayton, and I woke up this morning in Dover, Delaware. So just to give you an example of how much we travel. So when I say I see this in lots of cities, I know that Dayton's not the only city like this. Yeah. And so my goal is to not only be successful for us, but I want others to see that you can totally do this. And I think the important thing too with what we've done, other than the privacy fence that we put around all of it, because we put so much work into it, and we do still have vandalism in the neighborhood. I mean,
and you're gone a lot. Yeah.
And gone all the time. Now we do have a roommate that stays with us and takes care of things while we're out of town. So she takes care of the animals and makes sure the garden is watered and picks things when they need picked and all that when we're gone. But even still, she works a full-time job as well. So we want to make sure it's protected. So we did privacy fence it. Now that aside, the garden itself, we have next to nothing in building. I'm part of a seed savers exchange group that I created in our area. So a seed swap. The only rule is you can't charge. So, hey, I've got a bunch of elderberry clippings. Does anybody have some black raspberries blackberries or raspberries, So it's for trading and swapping. And we've gotten many things through that. So a lot of what we have, we paid nothing for.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. A friend of ours has a tree trimming business. We reached out to him, and the mulch is a waste stream for him because it's different trees that he's cutting down. He never know what he's going to get. So he doesn't sell his mulch because he doesn't have the space to distinguish. This is pine mulch. This is oak. This is whatever. And so he'll call us when he's got a tree that he knows is okay for us and it's not going to poison my garden.
Yeah. And even that, even the stuff that you wouldn't want to put on your garden is still great for pathways and things like that often, So, it's still be used a lot of times in other ways.
Oh, sure.
For sure.
We've got, I think we're now up to 12 truckloads of mulch we've gotten.
That's awesome.
And, again, with our friend, with the horses, we've gotten most of our manure that way. And because of that, our cost on this is low. Everybody tells me when I tell them what we're doing, oh man, but the startup cost in permaculture is so crazy. It can be if you shop for everything.
Yeah.
But if you're smart about it and if you reach out to people and network, I would say bartering and networking is probably the number one most important thing in permaculture to me.
You've definitely shortened normally a lot of people could do that if they wanted to take the time to slowly build their homestead up and just, and get something here, something there. You've streamlined it by the Seed Savers Exchange and other things you've been doing. That's brilliant, really. And hitting your local resources with the horse manure and the mulch, you've really streamlined this to make it happen. I would say to be able to do it as quick as you've done it and make the changes you've made that quick without money, That's pretty amazing without a lot of money involved in it, because, generally you can do that, but it takes a lot longer than what you guys have taken to do it.
Well, and last year for Christmas, my sister-in-law said, "Hey, you're really hard to buy for. You guys are never home. If you need something, you get it or make it. So I need ideas for you." I said, "Seeds. Get me vegetable seeds." And she's like, "What kind?" And I was like, "Surprise me." And
The variety pack.
yeah. So I told her the only stipulations is we only go for organic, non-GMO, and we prefer heirloom when possible. But aside from that, I am open to whatever she wants. And I got all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I had grown an icicle radish, but I currently have 20 of those in my beds growing right now. So that's about. It was a way for us to save money. That with the mushrooms, that's another thing we did to save money. So I bought a block of mushrooms to grow just in the house.
What kind of mushrooms are you growing?
They're oyster mushrooms. The
oysters?
First one.
Okay.
First ones were the oysters. And I just wanted to see if we even liked them and to see how hard it really was for us. And I had found a video online. I don't even remember who it was, but it was just a video I found on YouTube. And they said to crumble up the spent block and layer it in a 5-gallon bucket with holes drilled all over it with some wet, sterilized straw. And that you'll get more mushrooms even from a spent block. So we got 3 flowerings out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And we thought it was a dud at that point. Okay, it's gotten 3 fruit. We're done probably. Crumbled it up, put it in the bucket. And sure enough, every little hole in that bucket had mushrooms popping out.
That's awesome.
So we took that 1 block that I think was $20 and turned it into probably 20 pounds of mushrooms when it was all said and done. And now it's getting warm. So I've taken that bucket of mushroom and I've scattered it along the outside edge of our garden beds where the house shades it. So we're going to see if we can get them to now grow outside as well. And then we got some wine cap spores and we are going to put those underneath where our squash are. So we're going to do the sisters again this year with the corn, the beans, and the squash. But we're going to add a 4th sister to the mix and put some wine cap spores on the ground underneath all of them. Yeah. Hoping that the squash will shade them enough to get them to grow. So it's a guild based around corn instead of a tree.
That's nice. Yeah. Like a 3 sisters method, only with mushrooms involved in the mix. Yeah. I like it. I did the red top mushrooms there for a while. And then those, I got one year, I got a decent fruiting, but we had a real dry year and I wasn't real good about keeping it moist, and it dried out pretty good and it never came back after that. But I got a few right off the bat and then I just let it kind of go. I didn't maintain it. And, so they do it. You have to put them in a place where you're not going to have to maintain it much. Mine must have had a little bit of sunlight hitting it, so it dried out pretty fast without me watering it, keeping it moist. But yeah, I think their mushrooms are something that cost a lot of money if you're buying them, and if you really enjoy them, and you can grow them like you did, indoors, outdoors. There's a lot of options there, and there's a lot of different kinds of mushrooms that you can try your hand at. So that's a great thing to do, I think, on a homestead.
Yep. I've got reishi logs on the side of our shed between our compost bin and the shed that we keep all of our gardening supplies in. So I've never done those before, but we're going to try it this year. And I tried something a friend of mine had recommended, and it pained me to do so, but I chopped up some of my morels that I got last year, and we've got those behind our garden shed in a different area. We're going to see if we can get some morels. I know.
That'd be pretty amazing.
I love morels so much, but finding them can be frustrating. And with us traveling so much, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see if we can get some morels to pop up on their own this year.
You can buy the spores though, can't you?
You can.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing it in an expensive way, of course, but yeah, I was thinking you still could buy them. I know at one time, I think they're a little more expensive than most mushrooms to buy, but yeah, I think you can get them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, other ways we've done this inexpensively is that our local metro parks has every year a tree giveaway. So this year we got a pawpaw tree. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah.
Need 2 of them though.
Yeah, I love pawpaws.
You'll have to get 2 though. I think they need 2 to put off fruit. So you have to get another one. I only know this because I had 3 and my neighbor's dog chewed 2 of them up. So I have to get another one now.
Well, a friend of ours went for us. We were out of town, and so she got one. And then I have another friend that is growing pawpaw trees on his property. So
Okay.
I'm getting him. So I'll have two different propagation points. So I also can make sure that, they're two different strains.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then, once I started doing this, people in my friends and family network were like, hey, you're into gardening. My friend's got this thing that she's trying to give away. You might want it. And every time I turn around, I've had people show up and just drop terracotta pots on my front porch. Like, hey, I thought you might want those.
Awesome. Yeah.
I dropped off half a bag of potting soil. She's like, I don't need this. I'm not going to do any more potting. So I thought you might use it for one of your garden things.
Yeah. So
it's a thing.
Yeah. So you got a lot going on. So you've got all these raised beds. You're putting in a food forest. I mean, you're kind of slowly building that right around, and the other properties are probably more food forest based, right?
Yep.
It's just where you're expanding your trees and stuff. Let's talk about your raised beds for a minute. You said you put in 16 of them?
16. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And a hoop bed.
Yeah. Okay. That's a lot of growing space. What kind of things are you growing? I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you can probably grow enough for a whole year's worth of food real easy. Let's talk about some of the things that you've got in there.
So last year we were able to grow 250 pounds of sweet potatoes in that space. We grew, we stopped counting after a while in the tomatoes, but I put away enough tomatoes that we just ate the last jar of them in February, and we gave away a ton of them.
Yeah.
That's not even counting just the tomatoes and cucumbers that our roommate ate. So from April to November, she pretty much just ate from our garden. Like I said, we got married in July. We had leftover pulled pork from the wedding that we froze. So she did eat some of the pulled pork and chicken from that. But aside from the leftover pulled pork and chicken in the freezer, she exclusively ate from our garden from April to November.
Oh,
She
wow.
lost a ton of weight, is in the healthiest shape of her life. It's crazy. We have radishes, turnips, red beets, golden beets. I think we have 9 different varieties of lettuce and greens now. We've got asparagus that we put in a spot that's going to be a permanent asparagus home. Mm-hmm. And we have strawberries growing around the asparagus. We've got 4 different kinds of onions. So I have walking onions. I have just some purple onions. And then I have Walla Wallas. And then we have chives, garlic chives, and more herbs than I can even list without boring you to death.
Oh, yeah.
4 different kinds of squash plus zucchini, if you want to count that as a separate thing. Trying to think of everything. There's so much stuff that we grew this year. Parsnips. I had never had a parsnip, so we decided to grow them so I could see what a parsnip tasted like.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I did. I was surprised. Strange texture.
I've only grown one root vegetable that I just don't like, and that's rutabaga.
Rutabaga?
I just don't like it. I don't know. I've tried it like 5 different ways, preparing it different ways, and it just has a taste to it. I just can't. I just don't like. I don't know. Some people say they love it. It's one of their favorites. I'm like, I can't get on board. It's the only one that I've grown so far that I just don't enjoy.
Yeah. Well, we also have different kinds of peppers. We've got 6 different kinds of peppers. We've got okra. We've got eggplant. What else do we have? Kohlrabi, kale, cabbage, all the brassicas really, broccoli, cauliflower. We did not grow rutabaga because I have them as well. I love turnips, but I just don't get into rutabaga.
Yeah, I love turnips too. I mean, I love all root vegetables. That's why it kind of surprised me when I grew them. And I hate it though, because they're so big, and so they're such a really good source of food. I mean, they put off, it's a large, root, and it seems like it's just a lot of food it produces, but yet only if you can want to eat it. That's the thing.
Well, we just put in Jerusalem artichokes, so this will be our first year doing.
Yeah.
And we'll have those for the rest of our lives probably, because once you put them in, they don't go away. No matter if you want them to go away or not, they're staying. We do sunflowers, and then the seeds for the chickens, of course. And then we keep some of those back for next year, obviously. We also, I feel like there's more that I'm missing.
Oh, I'm sure there's probably all kinds of stuff out there that you're probably even thinking of. That's a lot of growing space. So, I mean, that's a lot you can grow there. I'm curious about we're both in the Midwest, and in the Midwest, when you're growing brassicas, we have this huge problem with growing brassicas in the Midwest, and it's that cabbage moth. How do you deal with that? Do you have row cover over them, or do you?
Canyon plant. last year. Initially, my vegetables were just getting destroyed. So when I put my second planting of them in, I was very frustrated, and I did a lot of companion planting, and it worked. I finally got brassicas to grow and not get eaten. It was
Okay,
a big
tell me about this. What'd you
project.
companion plant with them?
So I planted a whole bunch of marigolds in with them.
Okay.
I put basil in between them, which I usually put those things with my tomatoes, but I tried it. Somebody recommended it. It worked. And rosemary, which I never would have thought to put there, but it worked.
Awesome. Yeah.
And rosemary also under my rose bush. I kept having problems with the Japanese beetles, which I know you've had problems with.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I have.
Rosemary, it is an absolute game changer, and it will absolutely destroy the Japanese beetles.
That is awesome. You know what's funny is though, all the years I've been here homesteading, 1 year I had the Japanese beetles 1 year. It was crazy.
Oh.
It's like they migrate or something. They got to me that year. I've never seen one before that or after that. It's the strangest thing. I don't know. I think I just caught their loop. You know, I'm probably due again. It's been a while, so.
They do go in cycles, that's for sure.
Yeah. It was a bad year, though. I mean, it just happened to be the year I did a property tour video of this property, and they were just everywhere, you know. And I'll always remember it from that video because they're just on everything. But yeah, we got through it, you know. And then after the next year, I didn't see any. It was amazing. Yeah, so that's interesting about the brassicas with the companion planting. I row covered mine last year and had the best year I ever had, but again, you have to be careful with that because there comes a point where you got to uncover some stuff, and you know the heat, and once it gets intense, you know, you got to kind of uncover and let things go, and the cabbage just gets so big it's hard to keep it covered at some point. So you know, but it worked really, really well, and I had the best year last year I've ever had with brassicas. But yeah, I know the previous years it's always been a challenge with those cabbage moths. They just it's bad. There's worms getting everything. It's kind
of my green. I had never had cabbage moths go for green beans, but they ate my green beans.
Really?
Until I went to pick some of my beans. The beans still came on, but they ate all the leaves. They did not.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
It was the weirdest thing, but they were all over them. And I mean, they were definitely cabbage moths.
Yeah, the Japanese beetles hit the beans really hard. Beans, rose bushes. I remember my grapevine. I mean, there was several things they hit really hard. They really got like the berries, like the raspberries, blackberries. They went after those leaves really hard. The Japanese beetles were a real problem for certain plants, and other plants, they didn't bother at all. It was the funniest thing.
We had, that's another thing we grow is green beans, and we had a ton of them, and they were looking so beautiful. I got really excited. I literally went out there 2 days later, and it looked like somebody had just stripped them. There were green beans hanging from sticks. There was no leaves to be seen. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's exciting to hear because all these raised beds were on your first initial property. This isn't the expansion. This was I mean, you had 16, whatever you said. Was it 16 you said? I keep forgetting. That's a lot of growing space on one urban lot.
It is. And
I just want people to connect with that for a moment. Folks who, again, I always bring this up when I'm talking to anybody or I'm talking about my own lot, you know, and I'm talking to folks about there's just so many people that just have that someday mentality. I want to be a homesteader and I want to grow my own food and I want to be more self-sufficient. And they're always thinking forward about that day when they can get enough acreage to do this. Mm-hmm. But then they have a, 10th acre backyard or whatever they're not doing anything with. And I always just want to point that out to folks. Look what you can do. I mean, you just rattled off so much food that you're growing on that lot.
Yeah.
It's just amazing what you can grow. And you got a roommate that just ate the whole summer on it. I mean, that's all she ate. That's amazing, and I always want to point that out to folks. Don't wait till someday. You can do it right where you're at. Even if you're in an apartment, there's so much you can do. There's just things you can do.
There is.
Yeah. Folks need to realize that.
A lot of people don't realize how much you can do with a small space. I've got a friend who lives in a condo and they basically have a balcony and that's it. There is no grass that is theirs to plant in. And, he reached out and he was like, hey, I don't know if I can do anything, but would you mind coming and taking a look and seeing if you think I can actually grow stuff? And we ended up using shoe organizers that you can get at the Dollar Tree. Even. Yeah. Just poked holes in the bottom of the slots that the shoes would go in. Yeah. And you fill them up with soil and hang them on the outsides of the balcony. And he can grow now in those all the way around the exterior of the balcony. And then on the inside of the balcony, we've got little boxes that I helped him, to learn how to make out of pallet wood. Yeah. And so got planters on the inside and then things hanging from the outside that'll trellis down, and he's allowed to do that. So he can grow all kinds of stuff on that little small.
That's amazing. And then even if you had no balcony at all and you were just growing inside, there's so much you can do on the inside with microgreens and, just windowsill gardens and hydroponics and even aquaponics, if you want to take it that far. I mean, there's so much you can do. I mean, it's just, I think about all the things I'm doing on my property, and I could do so much more. I mean, I'm always looking at the next thing, because there is a next thing always. I mean, there's just so many options for growing food in every situation. So I always want to remind people that. And I'm always excited to talk to folks like me who are doing it in that kind of a space. I just think it's exciting. And I love the challenge of it. Sure, I'd love to have a bunch of acreage and have cows and pigs and larger livestock. I love that. But there's still so many things that I'm not doing on this little piece of property that I can do that still excite me, to get into one day.
Absolutely. And for me, so we have 4 grandkids, and so now he's the second youngest. He just had a little baby brother, but at the time our youngest grandson came out and was going around the garden. He got such a kick out of helping us pick the tomatoes and the green beans, and he just loved every minute of it. And for me, permaculture, even in the city, especially in the city, it's a way for me to show my grandkids, hey, look, you can do this too. When you grow up, this is something you can do. And, for my son asked me the other day, he's 12, my youngest. And he asked me, hey, are we going to grow some green beans again this year? I said, yeah. And he said, do you think we can grow more strawberries? I liked that. Thursday, he was over and just shoveling away up the mulch. He loves every minute of it. And so after we're long gone, I know that all of these things that we've been planting, they're going to be there still. They may not be pretty, but they're going to be there.
And I'll tell you what, there's things about, like even an urban homestead, you'll make an impact on a neighborhood, on your neighbors, your whole neighborhood, the whole city. And then you'll also make that impact as a legacy to your, family, your children, grandchildren. I mean, it's amazing that one small lot in a city can make the impact that it does. And it's exciting. I love it. I mean, that's just, it encourages me to get out here. I just want to start going out there and pick some weeds and get some things planted tomorrow. Now you got me all excited about it.
The thing that makes me happy is my neighbors, as they see me doing these. I was planting cabbages in my flower bed the other day, and my neighbor was like, what are you doing? What is that? Like, those are cabbages. And he was like, why are you planting cabbages in your flowers? And I'm like, well, this is the only shady spot I've got that still gets enough sun that they'll grow, but enough shade that they won't cook, because it gets too hot in Ohio a lot of times. And he was like, so you're putting cabbage in there? And I'm like, yeah, right behind my gladiolus. And he was just
whatever. If it works, it works, and it's food. Yeah. I love it. I mean, I'm a fan of flowers too and decorative stuff, but I try to go with the edible option anytime I can, or at least a beneficial option, herbal remedies or anything it can be used for. I look for some way that's going to benefit my homestead, usually beyond just a pollinator plant. I try to find that 2 or 3 other things that it's good for, and a lot of times it's food. I think when I was on your podcast, I was talking about the nasturtiums in the front of my house, all on my rock wall. It's all on my sidewalk, which is just right out in the front, right next to the road, and those are an edible plant, but they're beautiful. They look nice hanging down that rock wall. It looks cool.
It's funny. I had never heard of nasturtium until 2 years ago. I had seen them, but I didn't know they were food. I just thought they were pretty green,
Yeah.
And the more we dug down the rabbit hole into this, it was like, wait, you can eat the seeds and the flowers and the leaves.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And then we ate them, and it was like, this is the craziest flavor profile. Now I make a nasturtium pesto. Like,
yeah, it has a peppery taste, a little spice to it. I like it. It's just different. It's good to add to a salad or whatever. I really like it.
Bachelor buttons was one that people are blown away when they see me planting bachelor buttons everywhere, because you can eat the flowers on those.
That's new to me. See, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Bachelor buttons. Okay.
They're pollinators to our area too. So they're really cool to plant in your flower beds, and then you can eat them. You literally just pop the little flower tops off and throw them in a salad and confuse all kinds of people when you got pink and purple and blue and there's white.
I was talking to somebody at work the other day about eating dandelions out of my yard, and they're like, what? I mean, and I thought most people knew that, but they did not know that. They were talking about spraying their yard to get rid of the dandelions. I'm like, man, go out there and make you a salad. What are you doing? You have to get rid of those. That's good food, man. He's like, what?
So many of them now, though, are like our whole neighborhood over the last year and a half, it's crazy. The people who had overgrown, just dirty looking property before, to be honest. I mean, I hate to say that. That sounds
Yeah.
awful to say, but it's true.
Yeah.
It was just overgrown and unkempt. And now you see them out and they're edging the sidewalk and they're planting things, or they'll ask me questions. Hey, can I plant this over here? And it's cool to be thought of as a resource.
Yeah.
And why I started the podcast is I had so many coming to me with questions. Like, it started as, I'm going to just tell everybody these things and I can just refer my friends to that when they ask questions.
Yeah.
Hey, go. And it's gone so much above and beyond that. We just reached out to the city. We're going to do, at the end of our road, there's like a tree planted in the middle of this flower ring. Well, ours is a dead tree that fell down 2 years ago, and a circle full of weeds at this point. So I asked if it was okay if I planted stuff, and they said as long as I maintained it. So I got the dirt, I got the mulch, I got plenty of seeds. So we're going to plant it with all kinds of things. And, when I was telling the neighbor, he's like, well, what if somebody tears it up? And I was like, well, it already looks terrible. It can't get any worse, right? And well, why would you put edible stuff in there? Everybody else is just going to take it. I'm like, if they're hungry, let them eat.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're going to put fruit trees outside of this fence that you did. Why? People are just going to eat your fruit. I'm like, well, if they need the apple more than I need the apple, let them have it. I'm not going to eat every one of the anyway. And I'd rather it be there for them to eat than to just, drop leaves on the ground.
Yeah, I'd rather folks just pick it and eat it than me have to actually go out and chase them down and give it to them, because that's what I end up doing. I do end up giving a lot of food away. I mean, I got a lot of fruit, a lot of apples, a lot of pears, a lot of things like that grow. I mean, I can everything I want for a year, and I still got bushel baskets, and it's like, I'm just looking for people to give that stuff to, because I don't set up at the farmer's market or anything. I'm not selling it, but I love to just give that kind of stuff away. I got a lot of friends. I try to hook them up and then tell them how to can it. I like that. It's exciting to me.
Me too. And once we get to a point where I feel comfortable giving our produce away, our long-term goal is I'd like to drop off produce at our local food pantry.
Mm-hmm.
We have homelessness in our area, and there's a lot of need for fresh produce. Oftentimes, our pantries will have lots of packaged and processed food, but getting the fresh stuff is a little bit harder for them. And so that's something that we can do. And while I know I could make a farmer's market booth and I could sell it, I'd rather give it away to somebody and encourage them to do the same. I actually got asked this morning, right before I talked to you, right before our call, I got reached out to. I'm going to be teaching a workshop on urban permaculture and its benefits in Dayton. She's going to reach out to me later on tonight. We're going to pick out the date and things. But
that's awesome.
a lot of these things, just like, you're on food stamps, EBT, SNAP benefits, you can use those to purchase seeds for food and go plant starts. And a lot of folks don't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if you don't have the fundage to purchase these side lots, a lot of times if you reach out to your city or municipality, if you offer to care for and maintain the lot, but not put a permanent structure, they'll let you use that as a growing space. It's an option available, because the city would rather you put a garden on it and maintain it than them have to pay to mow the grass on a piece of land that they're not getting tax revenue from.
I think there's even opportunities, for folks, even if they don't want to say they have a large enough garden, they got all the food they want, maybe they even market garden or giving it away. There might even be opportunities for people to go to these city officials and say, here's a, quarter acre of land in the middle of this town that you're not even maintaining. Why don't you let us put a community garden in there? And because a lot of folks who are new to gardening might start out with just 1 or 2 beds in a community garden. And then what I've seen is they get a hunger for it. And then they want to expand and have more. And they start turning their properties into gardens and homesteads and beyond those 1 or 2 beds they have. And I think that's pretty exciting too. And I've seen that happen in some towns. And I think that's pretty cool. And I encourage folks to be that person, go and see if you could organize that.
Exactly. I would love to see more garden, more flowers, more food, more things like that in our city, and less trash sites.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people are driving around looking for a place to dump their trash and they see that somebody is maintaining that property, the grass is well kept, it's got a garden bed on it, there are flowers growing, it's clearly somebody's, whether it's actually theirs or not, they don't know that when they're driving around. they're less likely to dump their trash there. And so that's one less trash heap in the neighborhood. And like I said, you'll have to look at the video on the Facebook page to understand how bad this trash thing is. Like I said, it's on our Hogs and Hens page.
I'll definitely get the links up for your pages, your website, your pages, your podcast, all that. I mean, yeah, people need to see some of the changes you're making for sure.
Yeah. Because to see the difference in one of the threads, I posted a picture, a before and after picture just of our property. And in those pictures, you can kind of see some of the neighboring properties and the changes they've made. And when you do these kind of things, you start a chain reaction, because I'm making soil better on my property, which is over time going to, help with the soil in other areas. It's just, you're creating a microclimate. You're doing so many good things. The carbon drawdown effects, there are so many incredible benefits of doing this. And if more people do this, then it solves a lot of problems in a setting.
Well, there's no doubt that there's a lot folks can do just to grow food. Putting in some raised beds. And we talked a little bit about that on a small piece of property. I'd like to hear your thoughts about why you went permaculture. Is it because you guys travel, you're not home a lot, and you see the benefits of maybe the sustainability of permaculture, or does it go deeper than that?
It's a little of both. So we do travel a lot. And so, asking our roommate to take care of our 40-foot by 40-foot garden, it's a lot of plants to water.
Yeah.
And all have different needs. And so, okay, these ones you don't need to water today, but those ones have to be watered today. And that's a lot to ask of somebody. So to set it up as a permaculture food forest, the great thing about permaculture is the permanence. And there's a lot of effort up front getting it started. But once you get these things going, they just take care of themselves for the most part.
Yeah.
And this deep litter mulch situation, it's made it so that we don't have a lot of weed pressure, and the weeds that do pop through, I'm okay with. It's things like dandelions and wild violets, and I don't have a problem with those because I use them. And the dandelions accumulator, they're doing good things for our soil, so I don't mind those. And it's a lot less work and maintenance, but also we do have, between us, we have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. And knowing that when we eventually die, we're not just leaving them a house and a yard to mow, we're leaving in them something that has lasting benefits. And whether they choose to pursue the farm life or not, they have it as an option.
Yeah.
And no effort involved. We've done all the hard work. We dug in all of the berries and all of the trees and all of the gardens. And, we want to leave that behind. My goal in life is to leave this earth better than it was the day I started here,
I hear you. Yeah.
I think we're accomplishing that.
And even beyond family, you do that. I mean, just for your neighborhood, for your town, I mean, it does that. It accomplishes that to some degree. I mean, you've took a little corner of your world, of this world, and you've turned it into something more natural, but more beneficial. And that's the difference between a forest and a food forest, right? I mean, you could just leave a piece of land alone. It'll turn back to forest. But when you do it as a food forest, you mold it and shape it to where it grows in a way that benefits humans, in the biggest way possible as far as food. And I love that. I love that because so many people want to, you get these folks that say, well, the best thing you can do is just take people out of the equation and the world will be better off. Well, we're part of nature too. And when we can take our intellect and we can turn it into something that benefits us, but yet is still beneficial to the ecosystem, I think that's a win-win. And that's why I love so much about permaculture, because it does that.
It is. And there are so many things that can be so symbiotic, and they just work so well. And once you start seeing some of those connections, it's a beautiful thing what you can create. Just putting up our fence, our privacy fence on the new property. We finished that last week, and a neighbor down the road, I have never talked to this person. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen this person, but he was getting into his car and he's like, "Hey, that's your yard, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Thank you for the fence." And I was like, "You're welcome." And no, now that fence is there, the junk that's in the lots behind you is going to stop blowing through all of our yards. And I'm tired of picking up shredded pop cans and beer cans and busted beer bottles. And I'm like, you're not wrong, but you're welcome, I guess,
Yeah. I just
But
love that you're revitalizing the area and doing what you're doing. That's really cool. And a lot of folks, I think just so many people are just such a hurry to run away. And I get it. There's times you want to run away from those kind of places and those kind of situations. But God bless the people who say, I'm going to stay and change it. I think that is just amazing, because that's what we need more of in this world. Less running away and more changing,
when I originally told my family where I was moving, my family were like, "You're going to live in downtown Dayton. You were going to live in a concrete jungle in a rough part of town." And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Are you sure you're a country girl? Like, are you sure you want to do?" I feel totally safe in my neighborhood. I don't know why, but I know that I'm supposed to be here. And sure enough, here we are. And my cousin came down to visit not so long ago. And he's like, "How do you have a farm in the middle of this area?" Lots of hard.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, I want to hear about, I know here's what you're doing. Let's hear about what maybe the plan is. Where do you hope this goes one day, or what's the plans? Or, I mean, I don't think it's just going to stay like it is. I mean, I think you've got bigger plans even, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're limited on the kind of livestock we can have. The quail, the rabbits, and the chickens are about the max on the livestock we can do.
Don't forget your worms.
And the worms. Yes. Can't. My son calls them wiggles. So the wiggles. So those guys. But aside from that, there's not much more we can do. We are currently working to find out if we can officially get the beehives. The goal is to have at least one hive on the property, because we've got enough yard. We think if we're reading the regulations correctly, we think we're good to put a hive in, but we've got like a little 6-foot square area where we are allowed to put it based on the measurements required. So that's something that we'd like to add just from the pollination benefits, plus the honey and beeswax and things like that. We have a pond out front, and there's a willow tree that grows above it. The willow tree, unfortunately, does have to go. It is planted in a place that is constantly tearing up our sewer pipe. It is perpetually putting roots into that. So
they
that
will dump the water out for sure.
Yeah. So instead, where it's at, we're going to expand the pond, and we're going to maybe expand that into some aquaponics, because we're already going to have a pond there with fish in it, and it's in the ground. But why wouldn't we just put a tank above it with some pumps and do aquaponics?
Yeah, nice.
There's access to electricity right there from the pond pump as it is. So we think that's an expansion point. We're just not sure that's where we want to put it yet.
Right. Yeah.
Collection. So we've got our barrels purchased for that. We're working on getting those all set up to start adding rain collection. That's exciting for us. Yeah. We are adding solar. Over the next 5 years, we're going to slowly replace parts of our roof with solar, because our house is a row house. It's tall, and there are no tall trees that shade it. It's in a perfect spot for us to have solar. We can't go totally solar because we're in Ohio and we don't get enough sun in the winter months, but that's a big thing for us that we want to try to do. The garden shed, we're going to be adding lighting out there. Bob is building a windmill to go on top of it that will generate some turbine power to power it's just an LED bulb in there, but it'll power the bulb. So it'll be a wind powered little garden shed, so I can see what I'm doing in there in the winter when I'm digging through my seeds.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. We have about 20 trees that we're going to be planting in that side lot. And we've got a few of them purchased, and they're ordered, I should say. And when they start arriving in the next week and a half or so, we're going to start getting those out. But we're going to be adding bananas. And everybody thinks I'm crazy when I say this, but I have a dear friend his aunt lives in northern Kentucky, and they are just about an hour south of us. And she has a full banana tree growing in the ground. She doesn't carry it in. It's not just an ornamental banana. It produces fruit every year.
Wow.
And she offered him starts, but he lives in an apartment, so he can't plant a banana tree in the yard. So he was like, I've got a friend that might want one. So she's giving us 2. So we're going to try to grow bananas at our farm, because if she can do it in Kentucky, just a little south of us.
You know what? You got anybody that does food for us is a little bit crazy, but I also say try some challenging things. Have some fun with it. If you're not having some fun, why do it, right?
It's crazy, and everybody thinks I'm crazy when I say it, but I figure if she's doing it, then where there's a will, there's a way. And she said the first year or two, it was challenging. She had to watch it, but once it got established, she does nothing to it. It just lives and dies like an apple tree or a pear or anything else.
I'm not even so sure my Chicago fig made it back this year, which I'm really kind of brokenhearted about that. I planted it last spring, and I got a few figs off of it, and I was really excited because I was hoping it was established and really come back strong this year and really produce for me. And it's the only tree on my lot that hasn't budded yet, so I'm a little bit concerned that it didn't make it.
Oh, we're gonna get some kiwi this year, so I'm excited about that. And on the other side of our lot is where we have kind of our social area. So we have a fire pit, and it's a gravel area that we have left as a graveled in area that we just kind of sit around the fire pit and hang out. And we call it our beer garden because we have a collection of like vintage beer signs on the fence there. But what we're going to be doing is growing in flower pots all around the edge of it, hops. So our beer garden is literally going to be a beer garden.
Do you guys make beer?
We're going to be making beer.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
We've not done much with cover cropping in the winter, but we're gonna experiment with that this year with barley, and harvest the barley and use that with our hops to make our beer.
Nice.
So we can literally say this is a homegrown beer, homegrown, home brewed beer. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
There's some big things that we've got coming up. We currently are adding watercress to our pond. We're going to grow that in the pond. So that's exciting this year.
Yeah. I got the water chestnuts I'm trying to grow in my aquaponics system in the greenhouse. I'm fearing that ain't looking so good because I put them in there a couple weeks ago and nothing has came up yet. So I'm thinking maybe that might be a failure. I'm not real sure. I was hoping for some big things there, but it may not have happened. But watercress, yeah, we've done that, and that works pretty good. It's hard to stop that. That's pretty good stuff.
It is. Ground cherries is something new to us. Neither of us have ever had them before, but we like tomatoes and we like fruit. So if it's got the texture of a tomato but tastes like a fruit, I'm in. So yeah. I seeds this year, and we're going to try to get a patch of ground cherries going in. So that's kind of fun. We've mostly done vegetables. This year, we're really expanding and adding the fruits onto our property.
That permaculture will really take you in that direction, the fruits and the berries and things like that. I find that when I started building an actual food forest, those were the things I was putting in, mostly, and herbs too. I find a lot of herbs going in the guilds. Yeah. That's
huge. We have a ton of herbs now, but we're going to kind of expand the amount. So where I grow 7 kinds of basil now, I've got 7 different types of basil, but I may only have 1 plant of each. Not anymore, because we've learned some of them. Cinnamon basil, I've learned, is one of my absolute favorite herbs. So this year I'm going to have a lot more cinnamon basil because I let one of them bolt last year and go to seed. So we're going to see what happens with those basils.
I've never eaten cinnamon basil. Does it have a cinnamon flavor, I'm assuming?
It does. It's surprisingly really good in fruit salad. Okay. So you taste the basil, and then afterwards there's just a little hint of cinnamon. It's a crazy awesome flavor.
Okay, you got me sold already. I'm looking for some cinnamon basil now.
And you've got a Skyline knockoff right there.
Nice. I like it.
I know. Strangest thing ever.
Well, you got some big plans. I mean, you got a lot of things you're wanting to put in and grow, and I think you got bigger ambitions as far as the impact you're making on the neighborhood and on family. And I think that's grand. Also, you also have a goal, it looks like, with website and podcasting, things like that, to be an educator of homesteading.
Very much so. I have found such a joy and passion in this. And I have found when I talk to people about this, they feel my excitement and it gets them excited about it. And if I can inspire others to do this and make a positive impact on their lives, because it's been a positive impact on my life for sure, then I've succeeded in making the world a better place. And that's all I've ever wanted in life, is to make the world a better place. And I can't change the whole world by myself, but I can change somebody's whole world, and then they can change somebody's whole world. And eventually that ripple effect makes a bigger change. And so that's my goal. If I can tell anybody and everybody about all the things I'm learning, I plan on getting my permaculture design certificate. Right now, I just had such a crazy schedule. There's just no way to get that into my schedule. But I spend every minute that I have available researching. When we're on these long trips for work, I'm in the passenger seat on my phone, watching YouTube videos, researching, reading on articles, scrolling blogs. And, when we get to the hotels, I'm working on articles on my website. And, hey, I learned about this thing today, guys. Or, hey, I tried this experiment with watercress in my pond and it took over. But it's a good thing because then I pick it and we eat it, and things like that. And it's been amazing.
Well, I love that. I mean, I love that you got, grand ideas for making the impact in the world that you're wanting to make in other folks' lives. But I don't want to get away from the fact that probably the biggest impact that I think, and I know this because we've talked already before, one of the biggest impacts you're hoping to make is in your own personal life with your own health journey. You and your husband both have had health issues, and homesteading is really a journey in that as well, isn't it?
It very much is. So Bob and I are both overweight. We run on the road all the time. So a lot of our diet consists of what can we quickly eat on the road and keep moving. And I want to break that cycle. I want to be able to raise our own healthy, organic, non-GMO food and, organic meat that we can eat and that I can cook and pack with us on the road, because I want to be here for a long time. I don't want my grandkids to inherit my farm next year. And if that's going to be the case, I need to be healthier.
Yeah.
And it's gotta start with me, and I get that. So the more produce that I can grow, the less I've got to buy and the less I have to be dependent upon somebody else to tell me, I promise this doesn't have any pesticides on it.
Yeah. It'll be so much healthier when you grow it yourself as well. And just the lifestyle is so much healthier. There's a physical aspect to getting out there in the garden and working, getting out there in your permaculture garden, doing the thing. There's a mental aspect of it too, getting out there and just enjoying it, and that I have found has probably had a bigger health impact than I could have ever imagined. The enjoyment of working the garden, working in the food forest, and all of that working together to create a healthier body and healthier mind, and I think you're well on your way to doing it. And I don't want to, it's so easy to look at those grand gestures that we intend with our properties and think that's what it's all about. But yeah, it's really, I mean, mine started because of my own personal health. And I think we don't want to get away from that because that's really where it needs to begin. I mean, I think that's probably the most important impact we can make is the impact it makes on our own personal lives.
Absolutely. Bob has a pacemaker and defibrillator, and I have a serious heart condition. I have a problem called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. When I change positions, if I stand up or sit down too fast, I pass out.
Oh, wow.
So I have to be careful with that. And it causes all kinds of other health issues not related to the heart. But with that, it's important that I eat a healthy diet. And I need to be able to do that by growing it myself. And I know that. But it also means that because we have some health challenges, we've had to come up with some crazy ways to adapt. I can't handle the heat. So one of the problems that I have with my condition is I can't handle temperature changes. So if I get too hot, once I get too hot, I am down and out for the count for a day or two. Yeah. And so we garden at night.
Yeah, that's great.
And my neighbors laugh at us because we're all out there with little headlamps on our foreheads at 2:00 in the morning, digging in and burying our veggies. But you know what? For us, it's much cooler. I have a lot less bug pressure. It's just an overall easy experience. I have solar lights around the garden that help with that. And
hey, it's a permaculture concept as far as I'm concerned. The problem is the solution, right?
Exactly. And so it works for us. I can't mow the grass at 2 a.m., but I can do the rest.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I love your overcome it and adapting your attitude, and making it work and finding a way, and I think a lot more folks should have that same kind of thought process, where there's too much of this excuse making in the world. There's not enough people saying, I'm going to find a way to do this, and everybody just, I won't say everybody, there's a lot of folks who I can't do that because, instead of saying, well, maybe there's a way I can do this if I just change a few things, and I think there needs to be a lot more thinking like that in the world.
Absolutely. And I'm happy. I am more than happy to offer solutions or suggestions for people if they think, hey, I don't think I can do this, because give me your objections and let me help you find a solution. Because I know myself, initially, it's like, man, a lot of gardening is working outside in the hot sun. I really love doing this, but I don't know with this health stuff if I can do it. So I figured it out. I just work in the dark.
Yeah.
For us, a lot of times we don't get home until 1 or 2 in the morning from our trips. And so it's like, well, we've been in the car cooped up. Let's go work off some energy and go dig in the dirt for a while.
That's awesome.
Relaxing. It's a good way to decompress and de-stress after a long day at work. So it's got extra health benefits aside from the nutritional aspect.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love what you're doing there. Well, I won't tie you up. I know you're on the road. You're out there doing work right now, so we'll get off here. But I just want you to know that you're really encouraging, and I think that a lot of folks will just be motivated by what you're doing. And I hope folks will go check out your website and your podcast. I think it's fantastic. Check out your Facebook page. You're doing some great things there. Is there anything you want to add before I let you go?
No, you can find us online. It's hogsandhensdayton.com. And I'm on every Wednesday. I post a new episode on my podcast, the Urban Permaculture Podcast. And I really hope that you find some inspiration. Harold is also a fantastic resource. You've taught me so much more than you know. You've inspired me so much. And
I've had some great guests on who know a lot. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, you're doing this. You're doing the same thing. You're out there encouraging a lot of folks, and you're encouraging me, and I love what you're doing. I think you're making a huge impact in your life and in the lives of those around you. And I hope you keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Looking around, I finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I wanna flee. My world, I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead. A lot of folks don't understand why I wanna live this way. They've never eaten from their land like we do here every day. Snapping beans like Grandma did, sitting on her front porch. Hunting and fishing like a kid once you've done all of your chores. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead. Country or city, there's a way to make this change. You gotta start today.